Welcome to Season 5 of Own Your Divine Light Show. I am Yarra Atlantica Miller, also known as Janet Miller, and our theme for this show is the Divine Human Rising, recovering our sacred truth. And through this sacred truth, we have been through so many challenges in the last 3 years that we really are ready to own who we are, to own our authentic self, to step into our sovereignty and our power. And so this is why this energy of the divine human rising, which is so prevalent right now, is so important to talk about and share. And I'm so excited to have an amazing guest today, Raven Scott. So welcome, Raven. So glad you're here.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and let me tell you a little about Raven. So Raven Scott is a narcissist abuse survivor. She's an author, a human design reader, and certified meditation teacher. She believes we are all unique and have a purpose that our energetic blueprint can reveal to us. She searched for answers after leaving a toxic relationship that left her broken and wondering, who am I? And found that human design gave her all the answers and more. And we're going to talk a little about that at the end of the show. So stay till the end. It's going to be awesome. After discovering her life's purpose, strategy, and in your authority through her chart, she was set on her path to relentlessly heal and help others to do the same. In this karmic life, she is the author of Empath and the Narcissist, a guide to heal from childhood trauma with amazing effective exercises and how to live as your true self with Human Design 101. And she is the host of the Empath and Narcissist podcast. Her mission is to help empaths regain their sparkle back after the world has conditioned them to lower their sparkle. So thank you for being here today. And I am thrilled that you're here. And Raven, your work has been just incredibly powerful. I learned about you through you meeting me first, and it was amazing. I had no idea how to put a name to the people that have affected us. Being empaths, we're both empaths. We're very sensitive beings. And so our world has been affected by different people around us because we're such gentle souls. And I never knew the word was narcissist. I mean, I kind of knew where I grew up. I knew my family. I knew I had to leave. But narcissist, do you know what the actual meaning of narcissist is? I mean, off the top of your head, how would you say it? Yeah.
Yeah, well, it comes from the ancient Greek mythology of Narcissus. So that's the root of the word. And the mythology is this good question. Oh, well, I'm not going to get into specifics if he's a man or a god, but I think he's a man. I don't think he's a god. And he became obsessed with his reflection, so much to the point that he could not leave his reflection in the water. And he couldn't drink the water. So he just like literally froze there and shriveled away. Like he was obsessed with it. And he actually has a lover, and her name is Echo. She's a nymph, and she was cursed to just like be an echo. Like her voice and her own authentic person was banished by a goddess. And she must have done something bad. I don't know why. But yeah, so she was, it's like, I see that as the narcissist and the empath. The empath is like, you become a shell of yourself when you fall in love with this type of person. And there's lots of tactics that they do it. So it's not like, oh, you're a bad person, because it's just like this, you have such an open heart and you fall for all their tricks. And therefore you become an echo. And all that was left after he wasted away was the echo of whatever anyone else said. Like her own identity was gone. And so I just think that's
so powerful. I mean, that's a perfect example. And a few of your podcasts I've listened to are so incredible because you always bring in the gods and the goddesses and stories that really, I listened to the one about Inanna, and that was incredible because it talks about our shadow side. And it was the most perfect example. I've never heard anyone put it so perfectly. I said, you really have some down to earth, amazing examples of how to identify what's going on in your life. And I love that because I even saw it in a different way. I'm like, wow. So that Inanna's story was incredible because she went to save her sister in the underworld and came in with all these garments on, like she wore many different jewels and garments and a wig. And they thought they would trick her. So she had to go through the 7 gates, because once you go into the underworld, you're not supposed to leave the underworld, correct?
Yeah. And the sister was skeptical. She was like, why is she visiting? I think she made it an excuse that she was coming to grieve the death of her sister's husband.
Yes.
But you're not supposed to come to the underworld like fully decked out. And
Right.
if you're grieving, you shouldn't be fully decked out either. So it was like, there's that narcissistic trait in Inanna coming like to the gates, like, I am the goddess of everything, of light and the sun. So therefore, and I wonder, it doesn't really say that, but I wonder, it's like, did she want to replace her sister or share the throne with her sister, like take the whole thing? Who knows, right? But that's like the story of the shadow self, is that arrogance that like, I'm not going to lose anything. I can go down in the underworld and come back up, versus like, you can avoid the rules, which I can relate. Being with a narcissist, I thought that I could change him. I thought that I was the exception versus everyone else he was with, or, you know, you kind of like think that, well, no one else can get through to them, but I can, because I can truly see who they are. But unfortunately, like Inanna, she got stripped of everything. Every gate she had to give up. Her scepter, she had to give up her robe.
Yes.
She was naked by the time she got there. And then the ironic part was, it wasn't even her sister's like judgment. Her sister was like, okay, you're here naked. And then she took the throne from her sister.
Right.
But
that was strange. Yeah.
Yes, right. So that kind of shows you like she had a dark motive to go there. She took the throne for whatever reason. Maybe she felt like she had to get something back because she was so stripped naked. You know, like there's so many ways you can kind of interpret that. And then the judges are who killed her, right? So she gets hung on a hook, and it wasn't her sister who sought revenge. It was the judges of the underworld who really had the power, right? So it was like this karmic thing that it's not, us humans don't have this like ability to seek vengeance or get justice. Like it's karma. That's the only power that can. Yeah, it's a really cool tale. Really great lesson.
I remember the rest of it because I just listened to it, and it said that she, Enki took pity on her. He's they said he was an Anunnaki, which is very interesting to bring that name in there. And he allowed her to, she made a deal. Well, she actually had her guards waiting. She told her guard on the earth plane, after 3 days, if I don't come back, come and save me. Yeah. So when the guard showed up, Enki felt pity for her. So he made a deal with the sister. One of them made the deal with the sister that if she could stay in the underworld for half the time and then go on to the earth plane for half the time. Or Inanna made the deal. I was a little confused. I think it was Inanna made the deal to go out. So she left.
Yeah, I think he begged for Inanna's freedom.
Yes.
That was just initially, that was his thing. Like, that's all he came with, is like, I was just begging for her freedom.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, someone has to take her place. So who's going to take her place? Right. And so that was the journey. Like, oh, is it this person? Is it that person? And Inanna saw that she had compassion for each of the people who actually, they were like servants, but they were friends who actually cared for her.
Yes,
and then she saw her, which I thought was a really funny part of the story, her husband, who was surrounded by all these women. He was cheating on her essentially with all these grapes. And she was like, yeah, he can go down. He's not caring for me. I was like, that is the empath rising, and like, oh my goodness, having her like a justice moment with the narcissist deserving to go to the underworld.
It's so
there was the half and half. I think it was his sister or his mother. I forget now. It was one of his relatives that said, no, he can't go down forever. And so I think it was his sister. So her sister-in-law and him traded places in the underworld half and half. And that's where we get the winter and the spring.
Yes, that's what created the seasons. I mean, those stories were always my childhood. I loved those stories as a child. I used to read those books, only those. They tell you to go to the library, read all these books, and kids are reading, Dick and Jane, and I'm reading Gods and Goddesses. I'm like, no. no, I want this. I couldn't get enough of it. So when you started, I started listening to you and you have all these amazing God and God. I'm like, wow, she is like my soul friend here, that you can just connect to that in such a beautiful way. Now, I can't remember all those stories because I haven't read them in so long, but it was so perfect when I read that about, or listened to that story, because it was a perfect depiction of the shadow self in so many ways. And the woman, and it could be a woman cheating on the husband. It could be reversed, so we're not just saying it's all men, because it isn't. Yeah. But it's, it's good to, people, we always look at the male because, well, they're the stronger sex. So we look at them first, but, and stronger in masculinity, stronger in physical.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think the time where that was written as well, the divine feminine was not crushed, right? So the divine feminine, right? She was the goddess of the sun.
Yeah. Oh,
and there were other gods. It wasn't like only those in power are men.
Oh, no,
this was just one particular story, but yeah. It was much more balanced back then.
And I just loved it. I just thought, so that was a perfect story about the shadow, So now you talk about the authentic self, and how do you feel all the work you've done with the narcissist, you have created your authentic self? It's such a huge path. It's not an easy path. It took a lot. You reckon? I mean, we have so many similarities. You grew up, Catholic in a way. It was a different kind of Catholic church than I had heard of, but I grew up in the Catholic church and went to Catholic school 12 years, just like you, Christian schools. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And I did feel like my life was really sheltered, even though it really wasn't, because I grew up with a lot of narcissists. I mean, my family, my personal growing origin family were narcissists. So yes, go ahead. What were you going to say?
You were isolated, so you were sheltered.
Yes.
You weren't sheltered from the bad. You were sheltered by the bad in a bad system.
And you also recognize that in your life. It's crazy how you realize that. So I saw you said you dreamt of ways to leave finally. And I remembering you said, I dreamt since I was 10 years old of leaving my home. So at 19, I actually did it. And you said, do it when no one's around. And I did it when no one's around. Mm-hmm. And I got out, and that was it. I was done. I never went back. I mean, I did go visit, but I never went back to live. And it was nobody accepted that. Nobody in my family accepted that. They banished me in so many ways. And
because it was a rejection.
Yes, when I shamed them. And you talk about shame and blame. We live with that shame and blame, which is what the narcissists cast on us, that it's our fault. It's our doings that bring all these things forward in their lives. And,
it's the way that they deflect their responsibility. It's a way that they don't grow. And it's a way that they can control us. And especially children of narcissistic parents. It's so heartbreaking, because that is, you're looking to your parent as your rock, as your guide, as to how to live in the world. And when they're constantly seeing you as an extension of themselves, mm-hmm. and like your actions define mm-hmm. their identity and how good of a person they are, it's just so unhealthy. It creates that toxic interaction. The shame and the blame is the only way they can guilt you into controlling to do whatever they want you to do so they look good. And it has zero consideration on what you as a unique being need in the world. Your emotions are diminished. You aren't seen as a person. You aren't heard. And it can be a really traumatizing foundation.
It's incredible. You can put all those words to it, because I could never have put all those words to it. But now hearing you, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. That's exactly what I lived it with. So it's so interesting. And, I made it through it. We're here. We're doing work to, help others as we heal. It's been a long journey for both of us. Mine probably took longer than yours because you're younger than me. And, it's so great that you can pass it on to your children in a very positive way. You can start from the beginning with them to help them look at themselves as full people, that they're important, they're valued, their emotions are valued. Like you talked about, children, allow them to release these emotions that they don't have any control over yet. The old way was, stop crying or I'll make you something to cry about, that old sentence, Yeah. And now it's not. I see so many young parents able to, you know, sit with the child, hug them, take a moment and stop. I never saw that my entire life. So
Yeah.
it was like, okay, wow. I was like from another world, you know, like, wow.
Mhm.
And it is another world because we've shifted so much. It just shows how the human is rising, the divine human is rising in us, because you could heal yourself to such a point that you can do this for your children. You broke all the chains of all that narcissist in your life, that level of narcissism, and recognizing the patterns and helping others, like all the things you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you had asked earlier, what is narcissist? You know, clinically, it is a personality disorder. And spiritually, I see it as a very unconscious human being in their deep, deep shadow and not willing to change, versus what you're talking about, rising into your consciousness, changing the generational curses, doing what needs to be done emotionally, the work, the growth, to allow your child to be an independent person versus an extension of yourself.
Yes.
And then in partnership, you know, not feeling codependent or having to control them so that you feel secure or loved. Like that's the narcissist shadow. And there's scales to that. And I really think that it's like a scale of consciousness. How aware are you? How much are you seeing the world through your ego's eyes versus your soul's eyes? That's essentially the scale of narcissism. Like, how blind are you and how awake are you? And then you have to be careful too, because there are spiritually awakened people who are manipulating and who are using that for power. So it's, again, like, how much are you in the light versus the dark?
Boy, that's so true. Because, you know, there's so much of that going on in the world. You know, talk about, they got the truther movement on YouTube. There's so much going on there. I don't go into any of that. I just look at it and go, wow, it's just, nobody's can escape from this. You just have to be aware and learn and be willing to look at yourself. It's all this willingness, right? To look at who you are and what, am I living the life I really choose to live? Am I the person? Like, that's what you said, I became the person I was meant to be. This is what you released. You turned into who you are. And look at the things you've done. So we're talking about society, and toxic people can condition us to doubt ourselves, to become our authentic selves so much.
Talk about conditioning. I mean, that was definitely a hero's journey for me. You say, look at all you've done. I can't believe it. And of course, now I have aspirations to do more. But looking back, I mean, I'm just a normal human being. Looking back, I started to write my book and my mom panicked and like cried on the phone. I was like, how can you do this to me? I'm like, I'm really not trying to throw you under the bus. I'm trying to just share my truth and story.
Sure.
And I reevaluated. I pulled back from that version of the book.
Okay.
And it gave me another place of growth to be like, okay, let's share the story without, you know, hurting somebody. Right. But it's like that conditioning, right? Like that guilt.
Absolutely.
Like
it was part of your healing. I was like, yeah,
it was for my healing. And then for a while I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't, but that was just a bit of still her ego saying, no, don't air our dirty laundry.
Oh, absolutely.
That means I'm going to look bad all over again and I'm going to get judged. I can't handle that. And it's kind of like you have to get to a point as that light worker, or even in your own specific personal journey. It's like, well, that's a you problem. If I'm doing it with love and I'm not talking bad about you, I'm sharing my truth, then that's all that you can do. Because I've helped so many people because I was able to brave through that guilt. And on top of it, my ex blackmailed me. So I was like, all right, I'll just put the blackmail in my book and therefore your power is gone.
That is so great. I haven't read your whole book yet, and I highly recommend that to people. You have a copy? Because I know if I show it here, it's going to be hard to see with my background. It's a beautiful book. Empath and Narcissist. I don't know if you can see it. Oh, look. Can you see it?
I can hold it a little bit closer. Yeah, right there. Like in front of your face, or maybe.
Come on, Janet.
Yeah, because your
that's
picks
it.
Up your face.
There you go. Oh. It's always crazy.
I love it.
Backgrounds. There.
The blue screen.
So yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Not the best. Anyway, it's a beautiful book. You can get it on Amazon. Empath and Narcissist. Highly recommend it. If you're living with this or you're not sure you're living with this will help you answer so many questions just by, all the things that, Raven is talking about in that book. It's just incredible. And listening to her podcasts are absolutely enlightening to the point of, you can heal just by listening to them, and it opens so many doors to things that I was like, oh, wow, I never looked at it that way. I mean, I've got so much understanding now, and I've come to the forgiveness, and I've healed that. It took so long. I have to say it took so long. But like you said, it doesn't happen easily. And true healing doesn't happen overnight.
Every single person, no matter how long it is, it's a multi-layered onion. So you can't like bite into the onion and be done with it. Like,
oh gosh, no.
Right. I mean, you can't even cut it, right? Your eyes are crying. Like, it's a shitty process to prep an onion. And it's like the same thing with all this trauma and, pain and emotions and your ego and shadow and all this stuff. Like, it's one layer at a time.
And, until we can really, look at our shadow and look at our lives and look at all the learnings we've learned through those shadows. I mean, I used to say it was all the trauma and the hurt, but it's also learning, because we learned so much about ourselves through the trauma, unfortunately. But that's how we learn on this earth plane, it seems. This is the root of the duality we're in. And
if it's easy, we're not going to learn.
Right. We learn, unfortunately, through pain. That's how we decided to choose it on this planet. So, and you talk about how you can shift from codependent victim of a narc abuser to stepping into your own purpose. I know I was so codependent, not realizing it, and probably still have a little of that there. I mean, it's not gone forever, but so much. I mean, I didn't think I could ever leave home, but I thought of it, at a very young age, and I did do it at a young age. So I was very proud of myself that I could do it, because I was scared, but I was more willing. I was more wanting to take care of me and survive and lead my own life than to be living someone else's life, which is exactly what you're doing, aren't you, when you live with a narcissist?
Yeah.
Or two of them.
Or two of them. Yeah. Double dose. That would be horrible. Yeah. It's like this process took me 7 times. I would think of it. I would dream about it, and then we'd have an argument and be like, okay, that's it. This is not right. I know I shouldn't be here. Leave. And then that codependency, I didn't know I had no idea either, Jen, that I only, when I went to therapy, she was like, have you read this book? She like gave me a book about codependency. You may be, and this was like after months, right, of her just listening to me going there. I don't know how she did it. She held it in. She's like, immediately she knew I was codependent. She's like, this girl has some stuff to work through. Codependent.
Was it called Codependent No More? Was it the one by Melody Beattie? Yeah. That is the Bible, I should say, of the codependent people. That was mine too. That was my first introduction to what is codependency. Had no idea. I mean, I could tell you that title without even thinking about it, because it was such an important book.
And I couldn't think of it, but when you said it right away, I was like, yep, that's it. And I can see the cover.
Melody Beattie.
Yeah. I think I read it multiple times.
Groundbreaker. Oh my gosh. Unbelievable. Yeah.
So that book did help with that. The therapy helped. And so many other things helped, like my spiritual journey and really getting pregnant, to be honest. Getting pregnant and knowing like I need to break this cycle.
Absolutely.
Helped a lot. And it was easier for me to break free and go no contact with my ex, because we didn't have any children. I had my own money. Like, I was very fortunate that I could sign a lease and get out, which I know it's a lot harder for those who are financially abused and have to start a whole new life and career and like build up their finances.
Oh yeah, that's the hardest path. That's how they stay trapped. That's exactly how they stay trapped.
They control you through finances. So but thankfully my mom always said, you always have your money, just in case. Like, for some reason she just had this premonition, or that was just her idea. So I always had my money. But with my family, and even though they aren't, NPD, I still was very unhealthily codependent in all my other relationships, friendships, my family.
Yes, it runs the spectrum, doesn't it?
You see the pattern and you're like, oh, maybe the problem isn't everyone else, it's me. And so you kind of
Yes,
switch
we
up
have to look
how
at
you
ourselves.
approach, and the
Mhm.
boundaries.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
So
people pleaser, that famous people pleaser, which is such an
yeah.
old term, but it just says it as perfectly as you can say it. You can't say it any different.
Yeah.
Now we talk about gaining your sovereignty. Well, that's identifying those parts of us. That's our shadow parts, the people pleaser, looking at that and saying, okay, that person is, this is not who I want to be. I don't feel good in this
Yeah.
role. We don't feel good.
Yeah, and I remember my dad got so mad at me that I had said that I was a people pleaser in my book. That was like the one thing that really bothered him. But looking back, knowing my human design, it just was already there in my chart. And I just didn't have the tools to know and recognize that that was always going to be an area of growth for me. No matter how loving of a household I was in, no matter how much, it was my journey to shield up certain centers in my chart so I wasn't codependent anymore. Like it didn't matter what kind of environment I was in. It wasn't like all their fault. I mean, definitely that I feel like the religious culture they were in stoked it, but that's about it. They were very loving, but it was just
Wonderful.
innately in my chart.
Yeah. So your journey was just to learn this and probably become the teacher in it. I mean, you made that contract on the other side you had to learn through a certain way. Of course, we never know what that way is until you come into this reality, and then you got it that way, as did I in my own early years. So, and we can't share anything unless we've lived it in so many ways. You're not a good teacher. You're not really a true teacher unless you've lived through these things. I mean, I've always found that, like if you go to therapists or something and they haven't lived through things like you have, they're only talking through a textbook.
Yeah.
So how can they possibly even understand what you're going through? So you were fortunate to find the right ones to help you through this, because I had many myself. And I remember my energy, I was in healing school because I'm an energy worker as well. And my energy teacher said, yeah, you're with her, but she doesn't know what to do with you. And I was like, oh, thanks a lot. She doesn't know what to do with you because she couldn't really name things for me. I think because she was stuck on her own. The problem is half the time the people you're with have the same problems you do. And they don't identify them. And I had a couple of those as well. One I had that was.
Are you talking about a therapist? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and it's good to be able to be conscious and recognize, like, I'm kind of not going anywhere. Like, keep track in your journal with this particular therapist. Like, she can't quite connect. It's perfectly okay to find a different therapist who you truly connect with. It's called therapy shopping. Like, it's perfectly normal.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't such a great shopper. Let's put it that way. I wasn't the best shopper, but what I did was I liked having someone to listen. I needed someone to listen to me because I always felt like I was never listened to. Did you ever feel that? I mean, you felt that as being with a narcissist. That's like you said, that is part of their way.
Yeah, absolutely. I never ever felt validated for how I felt until I started talking about it to my therapist. And it was it was so such a breath of fresh air. I mean, even being able to grab the remote control and sit down and watch reality TV show, like guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
It was such a breath of fresh air. I'm like, I have control of the remote control. Like, this is amazing. But those are all the simple pleasures once you leave the narcissist.
That's so good. Yeah. It's amazing what you learn when you break free from those patterns. I felt the same way when I left home. So, what else can we talk about with the divine human rising? How you have so many steps to help the narcissists, the people who have been, empaths and all those affected. What would you tell people right now that need to hear, like, simple steps to help them get into the best situation, or to get out of the situation, and to how to manage the situation, let's put it that way, or know whether they have to get out? Like, there's two ways. I mean, and you say there's levels of narcissists. So some levels, maybe some narcissists you can live with because it's not as bad as, the levels that maybe you got into. I mean, that's why I left my home. It was just that bad. I had to go. But there's other levels that sort of keep you, well, I see it now. and I can work with it. There's it's boundaries, right? You can set some boundaries. Yeah. So
I think boundaries is a great one, but you can't draw boundaries until you know you're absolutely not being treated properly, because this is the trick about narcissism, is they convince you that they're doing it for your own well-being,
right,
and you don't even know you're being abused. Like, it's so mind twisting, and they jumble your wires up, and then they gaslight you, and they deny that they even said that mean thing, and they're adamant about the denial so much to the point that they believe it. And so you're like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. And this is where
I get that. Yes.
The first step is to just acknowledge that you're not crazy. The other thing is that you start to think that you're the narcissist. If you're questioning that you are the narcissist, that is the first step to acknowledge that you're not, because the narcissist will never contemplate and introspect, am I the narcissist? No. That means you're not a narcissist if you're asking yourself the question. The first step is recognizing, right? And the next step is really understanding who you are. Because that, again, this is why I love human design, because you can see your energetic blueprint. You can see where your back doors or your windows are open to allowing the narcissist lies and manipulation and emotional guilt to pressure you energetically. And then you can screen those off and start to really gain your truth back, gain your power back, and honestly, like, gain your sanity back. And then that's where you then can be like, okay, now I can draw a boundary, because I know that this is, hitting into my will center. Let's say you have an open will center. I'm going to pause, step back, and not believe this lie. Like, no more. I'm not going to believe this lie anymore. And so that's really where you can gain your power back, is through that. I mean,
yeah, that's quite a journey to go through all that and to recognize it. Yeah, it's such a, insidious? It's kind of insidious in so many ways, isn't it?
That's a good word. Yeah, I would say narcissism is definitely insidious. Yes, wow, that's a good word.
So I know that, so how you always talk about human design. So how, like, you're talking about the open centers. And I think if you I know for you, you helped heal yourself through learning about your human design. So I think I've also been introduced to that by a friend a year ago. And I just have dabbled in it a little. I know what I am. I'm a projector. And I think you are a generator, correct? You're a generator.
I'm a generator.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's like 5 different aspects of it, right?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch. I actually have an example of your chart if you want. We can kind of go through that so people understand.
Yeah, because it's very powerful. Yeah. I do something called the Divine Design Mapping, which tells you about your life purpose, which is also cool. But this is another level. It's like incorporating so many different things. It's mind blowing. Yeah, they both. Yes.
Yeah. So it's a combination. It's a modern system. It was just downloaded in 1984, I believe.
Okay.
And so it's a combination of all the ancient systems, though. So it's the I Ching, Kabbalah, the chakra system, astrology, and then the new part is the science of neutrinos, which is essentially, neutrinos are tiny particles that are less than mass. Like, they're still debating, are they mass or are they not mass? And they are a product of fusion. So out in space,
wave. I just got it's a wave. Don't ask me why. But go ahead.
I love that. That's totally it. That's it. It's a wave, right? So it travels from the fusion and it goes through, and let's say it passes through Jupiter, and it keeps passing at the speed of light, and then it imprints into your being, your body. And there's 2 different imprinting. There's the subconscious, which is 3 months before you're born, and your conscious, which is the month you're born. So it's like, it's almost like explaining astrology, this neutrinos. It's like, how does Jupiter affect me? It's like, because that in that moment of time, that neutrino passed through Jupiter, came over, and then imprinted it into your body at this very moment. And this is where Jupiter was, right on the circle. And so therefore that's kind
of astrology are so exact.
Yeah.
And that's how it affects us and makes us who we are. It's amazing.
And then it's translated in the human design chart as your gates. So all the little numbers on your chart line up with where the planet was at the time of your birth, and then at the time 3 months before you're born.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. I didn't know that part at all. That's
So cool.
Yeah, it
I
really
know.
is. So I know, what about, I think I had a piece here, but I don't know if I can find it now. I had it, but I moved it.
Your
Hold on.
chart?
Yeah, well, I had just my little, I know I am a projector 6-2. What does the 6-2 mean?
Yeah, so 6-2 is your profile. This is one of the big parts of your main themes of your personality. So 6 is the role model, 2 is the hermit, and there's 6 lines. So you have a whole bit different combinations. You could be a 1-3, 1-5, yada, yada, keeps going, right?
Yep.
And so 6, just in particular of your example, is the role model. So you take on responsibility of whatever happens. If you're in a group, you just naturally become the leader. You're like, okay, you guys, let's do this. You take charge. And you're like, we can do this. You know, being that role model to people around you, they just see what you're doing, and they're like, oh, I want to do it like her. Like she's doing something right. You know, like that role model energy is always around you.
That's so
and
it
can be daunting. It can be like you can get exhausted from it because you take on too much responsibility, right? So then it's interesting, particularly with yours, and I relate. I'm also a 6-2. The 2 is the hermit. So the 2 is the hermit. So you're like, okay, I'm done taking responsibility. You guys need to figure this out on your own. Let me retreat for a while and like just not talk to anyone. So you have like the extrovert and the introvert in your major personality theme.
That is crazy.
So technically you're an omnivert. So sometimes you feel like you're ready to go and be that, extrovert. And other times you're like, I just need to, like the last time we talked, you're like, I'm so tired. Like it's because you were in that hermit mode. You're like, I just need to just like retreat.
I have to honor it. Knowing human design a little bit, I've been able to honor myself in new ways that I wasn't able to do before.
Exactly. Don't feel guilty that you're tired because you've taken too much responsibility. Like it shows you so much of your personality and your, like we're talking about the shadow, the anana, and your ego, like how much of that you can now become conscious about, and elevate and like break through this type of kind of just autopilot toxic patterns, right? This is the map, the blueprint of how, like we always talk about out right now in the culture, like breaking toxic patterns, breaking toxic cycles. Like, how do you do that? How do I even know what my toxic cycles are? Well, of course you can recognize in your behavior, but if it's like innate and so subconscious, you can't recognize it. So human design pretty much tells you where your
what we need. We're trying to bring
are.
our subconscious into our conscious right now. I think that's how we gain our sovereignty. That's how we truly, that's our sacred truth. Recognizing our sacred truths is this kind of work.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's incredible.
So it's okay to take time to retreat as a hermit. It's okay to take that quiet time. You're not being a recluse. You're not dropping all your responsibilities. You're just recharging. And especially you as a projector, your sacral center is undefined. So you have an inconsistent energy source. And when you're around a lot of people, you amplify that, which can be very exhausting because it's almost like running on fumes. And if you have too much fumes, it becomes volatile. And then, poof, it like blows up and then there's no more energy left. So it's a conscious thing, right? You can feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
So it's a conscious thing to recharge on your own. You have energy sources, but you need to recharge on your own.
Yeah, we have to physically recharge so much. I mean, projectors have to. I know that. I'm learning that now because last year I was really just burned out on everything, the world events, life, doing different things that were new. I took the half of the year off, basically, just didn't do a lot of heavy stuff like I was doing the past 2 years. And I just felt so free. And I came into sort of a totally relaxed state, which I recommend for everyone listening. These are the things we have to learn about ourselves. That's why we're sharing this. This isn't just about me here. This is me just showing you what I've done and what Raven has done to get to where we like who we are. We accept who we are. And we live in the inner peace is there. We have to get to a time of inner peace. And that used to be just a word, but now you're putting so much meaning into it, how it really relates to us in some
And
way.
it goes through cycles like the earth. Like I'm a Virgo. I love the earth. I am an earth mama. And so like seeing the cycles of the earth and seeing that it's okay. Like a tree loses its leaves. Okay, that's your hermit time. That's your time to really grow and be quiet and be retrospective and recharge and master a skill before coming out. Like with human design, I took a whole year off of talking about it because it didn't feel right. And I was just like hermited that idea and I was mastering it in the background,
which is
you know,
wonderful.
to be able to come forward and then now really share in a conscious way versus putting people in a box.
Yes, because it's a lot of learning. It's a lot of learning. And the inner authority. Talk about the inner authority.
This is very important. I love this one. For all of you who are struggling with a narcissist, this is your way to find your North Star. This is your compass.
Love that. I love that. And
authority.
I know what mine is. I know mine because I don't know why. I heard someone tell me I'm an Aquarian North Star and a Taurus South.
Okay. Love it. Absolutely. And this is why these summits are so passionate for you, is to bring the collective together and elevate consciousness and allowing people to be their unique selves. Like this is the theme of this summit, and that's your North Star message, your North Node specifically.
Yes. Yeah. And you know, it's so interesting. They're both the signs of both of my kids. Each of my kids is one of those signs. I'm not going to say who's who, but it's awesome that how does that work? Does that work normally? I mean, how does that work in families? Does that ever happen? Or is that an actual thing that happens, or is this just my thing?
I have a young family and I'm constantly watching and studying. I really think there is something behind that where we always say like our kids kind of act like us. And of course, that's number one, conditioning. But then when I know their charts, and I'm always watching this, I know their astrology and their human design chart. It's like, I see that here. Like there are so many patterns that are interlinked. Like my kids have a lot of elements that my husband has in his chart that really are prominent. And then there's others where my youngest has a lot of elements that I have in my chart. And I can see like she's more prominently like me. Yeah, I think there's something to that, but I need to do more studying. So
it's interesting. Yeah, I thought of that, saying this is such a coincidence. How can that be just a coincidence? Yeah,
I think it's karmic, and I think we all choose like who our family is in this life, and to see that all kind of interlinked in the charts is cool. Yeah, so your inner authority, back to the inner authority, is your way of knowing what is your next right step. What is your truth? So specifically, an example for you, Janet, is you have the emotional authority because your emotional center is defined. Anytime your emotional center is defined, that is your authority. For me, an example is mine is undefined and my sacral is defined. So my authority is sacral. So as an emotional authority, you need to feel through the process. You should not say yes to anything until you've taken the time and felt happy, neutral, anxious, and then neutral again about it. Never say yes right away. For the emotional authority.
I used to be such a, the people pleaser. It was the people pleaser. I would yes, oh yes, oh yes. And then when I was I'm sober 31 years this year. So I've been part of this path of narcissism. You can be part of addictive patterns. It can be food. It can be, shopping. It can be gambling. It can be sex. It can be drugs, alcohol. Mine was just alcohol. It was the family picture. What can I tell you? And, what was I going to say about that?
Sorry about your emotional. You said yes all the time and you're a people pleaser.
Yes, there you go. That's where I was. And I just, my sponsor in AA said, no is a complete sentence. And I was like, I can't do that. And she's like, yes, you can. And then Melody Beattie showed up,
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And maybe you don't want to say no. Maybe you just want to wait and say, oh, let me get back to you. Like that's
I never knew that word. That is a good one. Now that's the key sentence for everyone listening. If you don't know how you want to answer, just say, can I get back to you? That is like the best because it gives you like a pause. That's your pause. You don't have to answer. Nobody makes you answer. It's just your own inner anxiety that, or it's your people pleaser or whatever you want to call it, saying I have to say yes or no right now, but you don't.
Yep.
You just say,
Yeah.
can I get back to you?
Yeah, can I get back to you? And if you have that sacral, which is called the pure authority, then you need to listen to your gut. So you need to practice asking yourself yes or no questions. So when it comes to these really big, important things, when it comes to, is the narcissist really have the best interests in mind? Is what he's or she is saying true? Yes or no? Then you tap into your gut and you actually, if you can practice again, because as children, we've been conditioned not to make these rude noises, but as a yes, it'll come up from your sacral. Is a no, and a is a maybe, and you need to think about it and kind of feel through it still too. So it's really a beautiful practice, and it helped me so much in stop regretting, like buying into the false lies, stop buying things that I'll regret later, stop committing to things that I don't want to. It's really, really important. Yeah.
Yes. All of the above. Absolutely. So important. So important. So I have one quick question. This is crazy, but my whole family are projectors. When I did everybody's chart on the human design, I went, did you ever hear of such a thing?
I have not. That is very rare. Yeah.
And I don't understand what that means. How do you work through something like that?
So all of you
have to wait for an invitation here. We have to wait to be invited into things.
I know you were just sitting around twiddling your thumbs.
Isn't that awful? Nobody wants to take the first step. Although, one of my daughter does take the first step quite a bit. She's very good that way.
Yeah. And see, that's where the complexity of your chart comes, is like, what's the profile, right? So those who have the 6 in their profile, that role model, will be the ones to take that first step. And you don't all just have to wait. Like you can have an inspiration and just start kind of pinging ideas off of each other and, invite. I think the biggest thing is that since you guys all know your strategy of wait to be invited, you can actually be a very intentional family. You'd be like, so-and-so, what do you think about this? We saw this, versus just kind of like moving through things and something pops up, and you're just talking to be talking. Like, it's a very intentional conversation that you can generate and develop within your family of projectors. And projectors have this wise wisdom. They have like this depth of knowledge that's like wise beyond their years. So it can be a really in-depth family dynamic. You can have some amazing, just kind of like beyond consciousness conversations, right? Like just mind-altering, changing type of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds awesome in the perfect idealistic way.
Yeah, well, of course, there's so many other parts in the chart that
and
there's areas of growth.
Yeah, and the inner authority that has something to do with it too, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, that's as far as making decisions and things and doing things. Yeah, so the inner authority is important. None of you are sacral as far as a pure authority, because your sacral is undefined.
What do you mean by that? What does that mean exactly?
So because your sacral center, every projector sacral center is undefined. And for your authority to be sacral or pure, it has to be defined. So that's automatically weeded out. More than likely, because it is very common for people to have the emotional authority, you all have that emotional authority. Possibly there might be a spleen in there, but yeah. So when you're interacting with each other, just know that you all have your emotional cycle. Like, you have a certain cycle and all of your cycles are unique to you. So if someone's peeved or upset, just understand that they're on their low cycle, give them space, and they'll be back to neutral again in a bit, So not saying things or pushing buttons while they're in their low cycle, and really being conscious about that.
Interesting. So interesting. I mean, it's just powerful to know these things about yourself. I mean, this is all the self-knowledge that's important for all of us to know about ourselves. And so some people might think this is irrelevant, but to me, this is absolutely almost crucial to know this stuff, because how do you really, navigate through the world when you don't understand who you are? Because we're the hardest thing to understand. Ourselves is so much harder. I can understand you quicker than I could understand me.
Yeah.
I can read about you and learn about you and go, oh yeah, I can see you quicker than I can see me.
Yeah.
And it's just, this is what, we're meant to see ourselves first. We're meant to love ourselves first. And I remember being in a leadership course, and one of the teachers was like, what is all this self-love stuff about? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Why are you making that negative? I think she thought of it as an old way of, I don't know how to describe it. It just that you're too self-involved, and that wasn't what it was all about. It wasn't self-involvement. It wasn't narcissism, as we talk about narcissism. It is just loving who you are and accepting who you are, no matter what you've been through. Like being able to stand up for yourself, being able, and in a loving way, not in a violent, harsh way, but to do it with love. This is all about love-based learning. This is what I find human design is, learning to love yourself, all the parts. My divine design mapping shows you your spiritual challenge, your physical challenges, your early life and your later life, and then your soul destiny. And all that shows you the parts of you that have helped design you. And are you on that path? Like, how far along are you on the path? And how
because a lot of people wonder, like, they're confused. They're in this transition of healing. Like, am I on the right path? And that's what I asked myself. And when I found the human design chart, I was like, oh my gosh, I can actually find my path. And that's even why I felt confident to write my book and dive deeper into my podcast, because that is in my chart. That is what I'm here to do. So I can confidently, connected to my higher self, know that I'm doing what my soul is here to do. And of course, tweaking here and there. Okay, like take a left turn here, take a right turn here, but I'm going towards that soul's destiny trajectory.
Yes, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. And I know we're moving right along here for time. So I know you gave a beautiful free offer to the group, and you also have a paid offer. I don't know if you want to talk about it. If you don't, we'll have it in the links. We'll have it all in the links. There is a human design reading special offer through a paid offer that Raven is offering, and I would totally recommend that. As you just heard a little bit about me, I just think it's so important to learn different things. And then her free gift is all about 10 days, how to overcome the pain of narcissistic abuse and live narc free. And it's an audio series. I mean, her audio series are fabulous. I highly recommend that too. So everyone listening, I want to thank all the listeners for being here, and we really appreciate you partaking. And I hope we open some doors for you into who you are and what your life has been like. And Raven, you're an incredible, it's like you're a soul interpreter. I just got those words. You're a soul interpreter. It just came through, and it's powerful what you're bringing. So much clarity, so much knowledge. Just getting me tears here. It's just so powerful. And I do appreciate all that you've been bringing through, because it's big for me too, because of how much I've learned just from, knowing you and learning about what you do. And you put the words to it that nobody else has put. You've just made it clear. You are the courageous journeyer, traveler that brought it through, your energy and your willingness to, bring it all through. It's so powerful. And we appreciate that. And we are grateful for you to be on this path that you've chosen, and to bravely and courageously go right out there and do it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. And the 10-day series, the audio series, inside there's a form to get your free human design chart. So there's loads of stuff in there. Yes, there's a workbook. There's a full moon journal release. There's that opportunity to get your free chart that I can send you. So yeah, it's jam-packed with human design and healing. So
there you go. You can't beat it. You can't beat it. So I want to thank you again, Raven, for you being the soul interpreter that you are.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
again, thank you all for being here. I'm Janet Miller, also known as Yarra Atlantica. That is a soul name I was given. And I love it because it connects to Atlantean lifestyles, which we are also shifting and, healing those parts of our lives.
Very
And,
Aquarius. Mm-hmm.
we are all raising our heart's frequencies to move into that divine human rising, and to know that we are nourished with the love of the universe is so powerful. And all these different ways we're being shown is helping us with this beautiful love that the universe is sending us. So thank you again, and I will see you all on the next episode.